The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
Around 7:40 a.m. on February 24, 2023, a 911 call is received from a residence in Herndon, Virginia. Only muffled moans are heard by the dispatcher before the line ends. Another call 15 minutes later. According to a man, he shot an intruder who was assaulting his wife. Officers arrive to a horrifying scene. A guy has been shot twice and a lady has been stabbed several times. A home invasion case abruptly devolves into a network of deceit, manipulation, and murder. Welcome to True Crime Stories Hub. The case of Juliana Perez Magalhaes and the Banfield family is what we're examining today. Investigators found forensic evidence, digital footprints, and personal links in a murder, betrayal, and manipulation case that left more questions than answers. Why would a husband plot the murder of his own wife, the mother of his daughter, with the help of a family nanny? What did the invader do to merit death, and who was he? The story grew increasingly complex as they delved further into the lives of everyone involved. Let's examine. Born in Brazil, Juliana Perez Magalhaes was brought up by her house-cleaning mother. As part of a cultural exchange program, she relocated to Virginia when she was 21 years old. She was able to work as an au pair with an American family through this program, offering childcare and cultural exchange. Juliana started working as a live-in nanny for Brendan and Christine Banfield at the end of 2021. She was responsible for taking care of the couple's little kid and helping out around the house. Brendan began showing interest in her as she became comfortable in her position, and eventually their relationship would go beyond work-related constraints. Later on, this development would be very important to what happened. Born in February 1985, Brendan Banfield has been employed for the IRS since 2009. He was responsible for handling sensitive financial inquiries, among other important duties. Born in September 1985, Christine Banfield worked as a pediatric intensive care unit nurse, a job that required a great deal of medical expertise as well as emotional fortitude. The couple's kid, who was born in 2018, was the center of their household. Brendan and Christine relocated to Herndon, Virginia, in 2019 from Long Island, New York. For $799,000, they bought a 5-bedroom house that would accommodate their expanding family. The Banfields' resolve to provide a secure environment for their daughter was demonstrated by their choice to move and make an investment in a bigger house. The initial 911 call was made from the Banfield home in Herndon, Virginia, on February 24, 2023. At 7:47 a.m. Juliana made the call, but there was a misunderstanding. Before the call abruptly terminated, the dispatcher could only hear moaning on the line. A second call was placed at 8:02 a.m., only 15 minutes later. When Juliana called for help this time, Brendan Banfield answered the phone and said he had shot an intruder who had attacked his wife. Christine Banfield, 37, was found in the master bedroom when the police arrived on the scene. Her upper torso had been stabbed several times. Joseph Ryan, a 38-year-old man, was discovered dead nearby from gunshot wounds to his head and chest. In the hopes of saving her life, Christine was taken to a hospital, but she was declared dead not long after she got to the hospital. At the site, Joseph Ryan had already been declared dead. After the horrific events of February 24, 2023, Juliana's version of the morning was scrutinized by authorities. Juliana said she had left the Banfield house soon after Brendan went for work with the intention of taking the couple's 4-year-old daughter to the National Zoo. But when she realized she had left the packed lunches in the refrigerator, she said she went back home. Because of the circumstances surrounding her return and the timing of this narrative, detectives became suspicious. Juliana saw a man entering the house with a bag and noticed an unknown car parked in the driveway as she got closer to the house. This was a crucial observation. It meant that there was an unexpected visitor within the house at that moment. When Juliana tried to reach Christine Banfield, she got no response. Then she called Brendan and told him what she had seen, and he went home. When Brendan arrived, he and Juliana brought their daughter into the house. After putting the youngster in the basement for protection, Juliana went upstairs with Brendan. They found Joseph Ryan leaning over Christina Banfield with a knife to her throat when they arrived at the main bedroom. Brendan pulled out his service weapon in response to this frightening situation and shot Joseph Ryan once in the head. Following this first shot, Brendan gave Juliana instructions to get a Glock semi-automatic handgun out of a toilet gun safe. Juliana obeyed and fired one shot at Joseph Ryan, saying she wasn't sure if she hit him or not. Later forensic evidence, however, verified that her bullet did indeed hit him in the chest. Investigators had serious concerns about Juliana and Brendan's contradictory statements. There were contradictions in their accounts of what they did and saw in the crucial moments before the shooting. The detectives started to doubt the veracity of their statements as they dug more into these disparities, which paved the way for additional research into what happened that morning. One crucial topic that needed to be addressed was the identity of Joseph Ryan, the intruder, and the reason behind his visit to the Banfield home. In order to discover any connections between the two parties, the case's investigators began gathering information. The investigation's conclusions added complexity to the case as a whole. Joseph Ryan participated actively in the online BDSM community FetLife. He frequently used this platform to make connections with people who had similar interests to his own. He participated in a number of conversations under the handle Taco Supreme 7000, expressing his kink and alternative sexual lifestyle experiences and interests. According to his profile, he was open to trying out unusual partnerships, which was a big part of his life. Later, investigators discovered that Ryan had been corresponding with a user named Anastasia9, whose profile picture was a picture of Christine Banfield. Understanding the events leading up to the fatal tragedy at the Banfield residence would depend on this exchange. According to the chats that Ryan and Anastasia9 exchanged, he was tricked into a position. Despite indications to the contrary, Ryan thought he was seeing Christine Banfield for a consensual affair. Investigators were immediately concerned when they discovered that Christine Banfield's computer was hosting the Anastasia9 profile. First, investigators needed to determine if this profile was being used by Christine or by someone posing as her. As a result, they chose to align the content with Ryan and Anastasia's conversations 9. To everyone's surprise, they discovered that Ryan's impersonated profile's messages did not consistently match Christine's usual writing style. This disparity implied that these messages had been purposefully written to trick Ryan into thinking he was engaged to Christine. Because it revealed a deliberate attempt to entice Ryan into the Banfield residence, the impersonation was vital to the inquiry. The texts included information that would have given Ryan the impression that they were genuine, which further muddies the story of why he was in the house on February 24, 2023. As investigators put this information together, it became evident that Joseph Ryan had been duped into going to a risky circumstance because he thought he was seeing someone he could trust. In addition to bringing attention to the case's complexity, this disclosure sparked debate regarding the impersonation's motivations and how it related to the broader chain of events that resulted in the double killing. The investigation's course was drastically changed when detectives discovered shocking forensic evidence as they dug deeper into the case. The manipulation of blood at the crime site was one of the most shocking discoveries. Blood from Christine Banfield's body had been purposefully spread onto Joseph Ryan's body after his death, according to analysis. The story surrounding the events of February 24, 2023, was complicated by this act, which implied an attempt to paint Ryan as the attacker. This evidence had significant ramifications. That meant that someone had gone to considerable pains to fabricate a story about Ryan's stay in the Banfield residence. The origin of the blood found on Ryan was verified by the forensic team's DNA analysis and examination of blood splatter patterns. The phony social media page, including Christine's photo, was the first step, followed by the obvious falsification of the evidence and an attempt to frame Ryan by painting him with Christina's blood. The investigators discovered that the tale was far more nuanced than it was presented to be. Every gun was aimed at Brendan and Juliana, who both insisted that their acts were solely motivated by self-defense. The needle fell on Juliana in October 2023, following months of inquiry that could only make matters more complicated. She was taken into custody and accused of using a firearm and second-degree murder in relation to Joseph Ryan's death. A combination of the evidence and Juliana's involvement in the events of February 24, 2023, led to the decision to charge her. Although she gave contradictory stories of her actions that morning, investigators observed that she was there at the scene during the crucial moments preceding Ryan's murder. Detectives were suspicious of Juliana's story since she claimed to have gone to the zoo to accompany the Banfield's daughter and then returned for lunches that had been forgotten. They discovered discrepancies between her account and the tangible evidence gathered from the crime scene. Furthermore, the intentional attempt to frame Ryan using Christine's blood and forensic evidence virtually clinched the deal for Juliana. When police officers showed up at Juliana's house on October 15, 2023, the arrest took place. She was arrested without any problems. Officers notified her of her rights and the allegations against her while she was being arrested. During this process, Juliana insisted on her innocence, saying she acted because she was afraid for her life and thought she was protecting Christina Banfield and herself from an intruder. Juliana was sent to a nearby detention center after being arrested, where she awaited processing. Shortly after her arrest, she was set to make her first court appearance. Prosecutors used the same forensic results and information about her communications on the day of the incident as part of their evidence throughout this hearing. Prosecutors contended that Juliana's acts showed a careless disregard for human life as the legal process got underway. They said that she was actively responsible for the situation's escalation, which led to violence. As investigators prepared for trial and gathered more evidence, the case against her kept evolving. Here's why Brendan wasn't arrested, in case you were wondering. Brendan's shooting of Joseph Ryan was viewed as protective by law enforcement. According to Brendan, Ryan, the invader, threatened him and would have killed his wife with the knife he had around her neck if he hadn't moved quickly enough. Juliana's intentional effort to shoot Ryan after Brendan had already shot him, however, was deemed to be second-degree murder. Following Juliana's arrest, attention turned on Brendan Banfield. However, the investigators persisted despite the lack of evidence to support their case. The next thing they learned was utterly heartbreaking. Juliana Perez Magalhaes became a live-in nanny at the Banfield residence in August 2022. She and Brendan Banfield started an affair as a result of this arrangement. Their relationship's dynamics rapidly changed as both people discovered that they were drawn to one another despite the obligations of family life. As detectives continued their investigation into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield in October 2023, they started to find proof of this affair. The relationship's revelation sparked serious questions about the possible motivations for the killings, implying that the decisions made that tragic day might have been influenced by personal interests. When police searched Brendan's bedroom, they discovered a number of noteworthy items that further linked him to the events that were developing. These findings included framed images of Brendan and Juliana, as well as a personal bond that transcended their work-related relationship. The room also contained Juliana's underwear, which provided physical proof of their close relationship. Together, these discoveries not only demonstrated an extramarital affair but also gave detectives vital information to support their case against Brendan. As investigators put together the date and circumstances surrounding the murders, the consequences of this incident grew in importance. Brendan and Juliana's relationship had evolved beyond a personal one. It had become an important component of the inquiry, affecting the way investigators conducted their investigations and forming the story of what both people did on February 24, 2023. A few weeks before the terrible events of February 24th, in mid-February 2023, Brendan Banfield made a crucial choice by buying a Glock pistol from a shooting range. Given the timing and the homicides that followed, this transaction immediately raised suspicions in the minds of detectives. Authorities looked more closely at Brendan's behavior since the acquisition of a pistol just before such a violent incident raised the possibility of premeditation. It was also disclosed that just prior to the incident, Juliana and Brendan had exchanged their phones for new models. Investigators became even more suspicious as a result of this shift in communication equipment. The fact that these transfers took place only a few days prior to the killing suggested that they might have been made in an effort to get rid of any contact logs or evidence that might connect them to planned activities before the murders. In an effort to create a clearer chronology of events preceding the altercation with Joseph Ryan, investigators started to wonder if these acts were a component of a bigger scheme that involved both Juliana and Brendan. Despite obtaining strong evidence against Brendan Banfield, the police still required more. As a result, after Juliana was arrested, police officers devised a plan to keep an eye on her communications while she was detained. This included listening in on Juliana and Brendan's phone conversations, a standard investigative method in high-profile cases when the suspect's connection may provide important information. The need to obtain information that could shed light on their relationship dynamics and any possible deliberate activities connected to the deaths of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan led to the decision to tap these calls. During a bond hearing, Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney Eric Klingon disclosed in a taped call from jail that Juliana had concerns about their connection. She said to Brendan, "I hope you are not just staying with me because you are afraid of me turning against you." This statement gave the impression that she was thinking about the consequences of their actions on that fateful day and showed that she was aware of the perilous situation they were both in. Equally telling was Brendan's reaction throughout this phone conversation. On the taped phone line, he allegedly told her to be silent. The final nail in Brendan's coffin was this directive. It was obvious that he was trying to steer the story and keep Juliana from sharing details that would link him to the crimes. After a thorough 11-month investigation into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield, police officials finally took Brendan Banfield into custody in September 2024. Detectives made the arrest after obtaining a lot of evidence, such as forensic results and discrepancies in Brendan's claims, that connected him to the crimes. Brendan was safely taken into custody at his home by law officers. He was arrested in September 2024 and will face severe legal consequences. Aggravated murder and the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony were the main counts against him. The facts surrounding Joseph Ryan's death — he was shot in the Banfield residence on February 24, 2023 — led to the charge of aggravated murder. Because Brendan allegedly planned the events that resulted in the altercation with Ryan, prosecutors contended that his actions showed a careless disdain for human life and established premeditation. Because he was using his service weapon during the event, Brendan was also charged with employing a firearm in the commission of a felony. This charge brought the crime's seriousness to light because it included both the illegal taking of another person's life and the use of a handgun, which intensified the offense's nature. Regarding the prosecution's case against Brendan, they had addressed every possible weakness. They had prepared a case against him for 11 months, after all. They pointed out a few significant contradictions in his story of February 24, 2023. They started off by discussing Brendan's time and behavior that day. Around 7:10 a.m., he left his residence, but he didn't go to work as planned. Instead, he parked at a McDonald's and stayed there, as if he was waiting for Juliana to call. This implied that instead of going to work, he might have been waiting for the events to happen. And then there was the odd case of 2 911 calls. They were separated by about 15 minutes. The operator heard only moans during the initial call, but Juliana never mentioned that she was in immediate danger or that she had been injured during the entire altercation. What then caused the initial call to be blank? Juliana didn't approach the authorities for assistance until 15 minutes after the initial call. Why wasn't the matter reported right away if it was as bad as they made it seem? Perhaps because they were still in the process of incarcerating both victims. Brendan's retrieval of a second firearm was another crucial error that the prosecution noticed. Juliana claims that Brendan shot Joseph Ryan, blinding him, and then requested her to get a Glock semi-automatic weapon out of a bathroom gun safe. This was an odd request. Why did Brendan require Juliana to shoot Joseph again if he was already dangerous after being shot in the head? This discrepancy implied that their alleged self-defense situation lacked urgency. Why, in your opinion, did Brendan urge Juliana to use a second gun to shoot Ryan? Please share your opinions in the comments section. As a result, the prosecution adamantly maintained that Brendan Banfield was not only a spectator to the terrible events of February 24, 2023, but rather an active participant in a well-thought-out scheme that eventually resulted in Joseph Ryan's death. Evidence found by investigators points to Brendan as the mastermind behind the Christine impersonation on the fetish website FetLife. Brendan himself created this profile under the name Anastasia9, and he later gave Juliana instructions to use it to entice Joseph Ryan to the Banfield residence under false pretenses. According to the prosecution, this action showed Brendan's readiness to use dishonest methods in order to further his objectives. Additionally, there was evidence that directly connected him to the death of his wife and a clear motive. According to testimony, he had stated that he wanted to get rid of her soon after he started having an affair with Juliana. This wish to avoid marriage was presented as the motivation for his deeds on that tragic day. After the act was completed, he would attempt to tamper with the evidence by smearing Ryan with Christina's blood in an attempt to frame him, even though he was the one who had planned the whole thing. The arrest suspect Juliana made a plea deal in April 2024, which was a new and important move in the case. Juliana was charged with second-degree murder and firearm use in relation to Joseph Ryan's death after her arrest. The evidence against her grew as the inquiry went on, leading to talks about a possible plea agreement. A modification of the accusations against her was one of the specifics of the plea deal. Initially charged with second-degree murder, Juliana entered a guilty plea to voluntary manslaughter, a lesser punishment. This choice was made as part of a plea bargain with the prosecution. The prosecution and Juliana's defense lawyer worked out the plea agreement. Discussions addressing the evidence against her, possible sentencing guidelines, and any cooperation she might offer in relation to Brendan Banfield or other case-related matters were all part of this process. Juliana sought to lessen the possible punishment she may have received if found guilty of second-degree murder by entering a plea to a lesser charge. The goal of this calculated action was to lessen her legal repercussions. Juliana's willingness to assist law enforcement by giving information on Brendan and other pertinent aspects about the case, particularly what happened on the day of the murders, was a turning point in the plea deal. Both parties benefited from this collaboration, which helped prosecutors strengthen their case against Brendan and gave Juliana a better outcome. Months and months of negotiations between the two parties ended on October 29, 2024, and Juliana consented to assist the authorities. Regarding the specifics of her new sentence, she might be released with credit for time served, but could also face 10 years in prison. Do you believe she should have fought the case, or that accepting the plea deal was the proper course of action? Please share your opinions in the space provided for comments below. Both Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhaes have important trials coming up as the legal proceedings advance. Juliana faces a maximum sentence of 10 years in jail, possibly with time served taken into account, at her sentencing on March 21, 2025. Brendan faces serious allegations of aggravated murder and using a firearm in the conduct of a felony, which carry a life sentence without the possibility of release. His trial is set for February 3, 2025. The case's complexity are still being examined because more information on the circumstances surrounding Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield's untimely deaths may be revealed by continuing investigations. The legal statuses of both defendants are crucial as they deal with their individual charges and get ready for the courtroom proceedings. Justice for all those involved will be determined in large measure by the results of these trials.